My name's Matt Pullen. I work in the product marketing team here at Jamf. Before Jamf though, I was an educator for over 20 years, with the majority of that time supporting others with the use of technology to make an impact for learners. I've seen firsthand the impact technology can have when you focus on students. And in today's webinar, we'll be discussing exactly that. What is the impact of technology choice when you lead with an outcome of student learning? Let's take a look at that agenda. First of all, let's explore what vision for technology has as an impact on that technology choice. Next, we'll take a look at whether we're learning about or learning with technology and the differences between those two approaches. Then, we'll take a look at how we can meet that vision with a very clear purpose to your purchasing decisions around the type of technology that you're investing in. And finally, how can Jamf support you at all of these stages of your deployment? Let's get going. First of all, what drives your vision? Technology deployment in education can be driven by various different needs. They could be the curriculum that you're following, government initiatives, the skills of the workforce, or the individual student needs. All of these things have a direct impact on the type of technology that you want to purchase. And while those technology skills are absolutely crucial due to an increasing workplace demand, learning to use technology and using technology to aid learning are very distinctly different things. When we focus on just using a tool to learn a skill that you think might be applicable in the workplace, we miss the opportunity to engage with students to think about how technology can change the way they simply learn the content in the first place, unlocking that ability to learn new skills along the way that might reflect a changing workforce as they grow up. If we lead with learning as the primary goal, we significantly alter that choice in technology. But often the technology state that you have is a driver for how you choose your technology. But is that always the correct focus? If you lead with technology, you may choose technology which just meets your IT needs. If you lead with learning, you significantly think about changing which technology purchase is going to impact on the student's direct outcomes. If we take cloud-based tools, for example, things like Office 365 and Google Workspace for Education work pretty much across any devices and shouldn't really be a driver to the type of technology that you use. Now, when we think about the people and the purpose behind the tools that you're using, these are just a range of stakeholders that are impacted by any technology deployment. Each persona comes from a single purpose, and that's probably all around empowering that student success. But we need to think about meeting each individual need with the technology more than just simply deploying a device. It's more about providing a device that supports and develops what each person can achieve. Otherwise, the device simply just gets put down or is seen as a distraction to learning. If we think about how that device can enhance learning and teaching beyond simply just having technology, we need to think about how we change or transform what technology can do in the classroom or for any one of these individual roles. We know that technology in education is still at that tipping point where educators can easily do their role without technology in the classroom. So when we introduce technology, what is the real impact it's going to have? Is it merely acting as a substitution for what currently exists, i.e. paper and pens? Or is it going to be used to redefine what learning actually looks like in the classroom? To provide new opportunities for students, new opportunities for curricula to embrace what the world looks like beyond the classroom. At this level, it's not just about how to use the technology, but if you do strive for that redefinition, technology can change forever the approaches and outcomes that become ingrained in the fabric of the institution. And that can lead to saving time, money, as well as providing those new opportunities that were not possible without the use of technology. Let's dig into that a little bit more. When we look at this from a technology for IT versus learning point of view, we can see the stark difference between how we're approaching the type of technology that we're purchasing. If we focus purely on IT skills, we're looking more at that traditional approach to teaching about presentations, word processing, spreadsheets, or even coding. We focus on the function of the technology to meet a demand in the workforce that probably is changing an awful lot. This comes from a IT curricular point of view, where sometimes that curriculum doesn't necessarily meet the technology needs that go beyond what IT deems important. If we look at this from a learning focus point of view, we can see how we can use this to enhance learning. That technology is there to support students in various subjects and personalises that education experience. It's not simply about using the technology as a tool to learn about technology. It's the technology itself supporting students in various ways to allow them new ways to access that content, supporting learning redesign, even supporting a redesign in learning spaces and how buildings may even be utilised going forward. So if we think about technology for learning, let's take a look at some of those wider things that we can gain from this. A lot of debate happens around this idea of, are we using technology purely for consumption or for creation? But does it actually need to be one or the other? If we create things as students, we know that benefits their learning. It gives them new ways to interact with things. But then we can use that created content for other students to consume. Therefore, it's more personalised to them. Think about a student studying for exams who creates their own revision materials rather than going on YouTube and looking for somebody else's. Students in that way are taking more ownership of how they're learning throughout the course of their studies. Not just focusing on regurgitating information, but using some of the skills to help them further down the line to remember what they've done and apply it in different ways. This leads to those alternative opportunities. All of a sudden now we can think about students who can access things in a way that works best for them. How do those tools that they're using provide them new ways to access information that once might not seem relevant to them? They can think about how that technology impacts on their lives going forward and beyond the school. We see this quite often. You can go on YouTube, TikTok, or any of the social media platforms and see students as creators that are earning money as a result of what they're doing with technology. This is huge and leads students to believe that technology can open up new opportunities to them and give them more mobility within their career choices. And when we think about support, how does the technology develop how support is provided to students? Traditionally, the teacher will stand at the front of the class and support the students within an hour time frame. But we saw during COVID that those new opportunities through video creation, the opportunity to look back on what teachers have said, to take that away from the classroom and invest more time to understand concepts in more detail. It doesn't have to simply be the choice to listen and make notes. If we do that, we just really take away the opportunities for some of our students that might struggle with that as an approach. Where teachers can create videos and share them with students, or even students creating those videos and sharing them with each other, that provides new opportunities to learn beyond the classroom. And when we look at real-world engagement, how do students see that the purpose of what they're creating has an impact beyond the classroom? Lots of schools do this really well by sharing student project work that is real and impacts on their local communities. That way, students can see the impact of what learning is and see the opportunities that exist if they understand how technology can support them as they grow into future citizens of the world. It also allows them to have a deeper understanding, that application of information into the real world. Now, this has a huge bearing on choosing the right technology. As we've said, if you focus on that traditional tool that's in the classroom, you're probably going to be focusing more on the productivity tools, the use of internet, coding, and having the keyboard as that only real viable input option. And this is great if we're asking students to be able to do some of those skills, i.e. create a presentation, make a spreadsheet, or do word processing. Useful skills for students to have as they move on in their lives and into their future careers, but it doesn't necessarily stretch how we can utilize technology to do so much more. If we think about that device being for a learner-centered approach, we change how we can reimagine those interactions between student and teacher. We can think about the personalized opportunities based on choice of how students might present their information. We can think about how students can be creative in their learning and not simply just use one input source, but think about the various different ways that they can showcase their knowledge and information to be able to gain that future success that they want. And we think about tools that are going to be accessible to all. The keyboard is one way to input information, but there are students that just will struggle to be able to do that, be that to do with a physical disability or simply just their age. Giving them the tools that enable them to be able to access learning at any age of their progression is really critical. And just because they have the ability to use the keyboard doesn't mean that should be the only tool that they should have to use. So then when we think about using technology in the classroom and we see iPads being used more often, how does it support this range of skills that we know students are going to need as they go into their career progression? Be able to collaborate, communicate differently, the critical thinking skills that are absolutely essential for students to be able to be able to be adaptable. We definitely saw that recently with the COVID pandemic. How do we change how we approach things to be able to pivot quickly to answer new problems that we're seeing? And so when we think about the tools that we provide those students, are we giving them the tools that enable them to easily do these things? Things like the camera, the microphone that provide alternative approaches to adding content. Not simply an accessibility tool, but a different way of being able to demonstrate knowledge. But those accessibility tools are equally important. Providing equality across all of the students with things like screen readers, screen filters, or speech to text not only supports the students that need that from an accessibility point of view, but equally support all students that might just want to do things in a slightly different way. Speech to text, for example, is a great way to help a student who doesn't fully understand how to spell complex words in science, but they know how to say it, and by saying it to the device, they now know how to spell it because they'll see it on their screen. Or screen readers that just allow a student to maybe go and work somewhere differently and have the device talk to them if it's in a busy space, helping them maybe focus a little bit more on some of those words. And that might help those students that have English as an additional language, because now all of a sudden they can hear the words, which might be easier to understand, but also see the words so they can make that concrete connection between what they hear and what they see. All of these things are really, really important in the classroom. And again, when we focus on those legacy tools such as Office 365 and Google Workspace, they work perfectly well on an iPad. They provide you with the opportunities to think about the best cloud solutions alongside the best physical tools to make students work to their best of their ability. And one thing that is always critical is making sure that we have longevity and equity in what we're doing with the devices. Continuous learning is absolutely vital. Making sure those devices are kept up to date avoids hindering any learning breaks. Students want to know that they are going to be able to access the tools that they are used to using without things stopping working on them. And schools want to know that if they build a curriculum which has technology at the heart of it, that those students that enter in 3 years' time are going to have an equal, if not better, experience because of the development of technology, and not be hindered because that technology is old and starting to go out of date. And we want to make sure that we have equal access to these tools. All students should have equal opportunity to use that technology regardless of the teacher's preference or comfort with technology. We see this as absolutely essential. You shouldn't have a lottery in the classroom where you get great access to technology if the teacher feels that they like to use it. If we know it makes a difference in the classroom to provide accessible learning for students, all teachers should feel confident to use that technology. Not necessarily to be the IT teacher in the classroom, but to at least be able to offer that opportunity for their students to be able to personalize their own learning and use the tools which are going to meet their own specific needs. We talked about continuous learning, and a refresh cycle is absolutely integral to that. Making sure those devices don't just get old and out of date and therefore end up just sitting in the cupboard because you can't rely on them anymore. Regular updates and replacements ensure that device remains functional and effective for learning in the classroom. And we have to talk about cost savings. Schools' budgets are always going to be tight. But when we think about utilising the tools beyond just an IT deployment and using them in multiple lessons throughout the school day, there are added benefits around reducing the use of paper, the use of printing, and different software that's used in different areas that could actually all be used on one single device. These are critical things to look at when you're thinking about the tool in the classroom to support learning. So we look at this at Jamf, that if you're choosing Apple, choose Jamf. We know that Apple provides great mobility, accessibility, creativity, and that simple usability that makes students simply love using the devices. They're familiar with it from a very young age. And we know at Jamf, we focus on the tools that Apple provide to make sure that they are focused on the education tools. They're secured, and they provide that classroom support that gives those teachers the confidence to use those tools. And beyond that, if those devices go home, because that's how schools can see that transformational learning opportunity, how do we provide those tools to support parents as well, so they feel empowered to be able to have those devices in the house without it becoming a distraction and taking away from that learning benefit? We see this at Jamf as a purposeful deployment. We look at this about meeting the needs of all, with IT being thread through all levels to ensure that all people are supported for that purpose to be met. The purpose may change based on the scale of your deployment, but overall goals, learning and teaching approaches should all stay the same across the whole estate. What remains the same is the need to meet those purposes with an approach that removes the need for specialist IT knowledge for anyone that touches the device, as that can sometimes be the key point of failure in a system. A successful deployment goes way beyond the technology. It supports the learning and teaching through the people that interact with those devices, the teachers, the students, curriculum leads, and even those parents and carers. If you deploy with a purpose, you transform learning and teaching and unlock the huge potential that provide those equitable opportunities. And when we talk about the people and the purpose behind this, we want to make sure that we allow them to focus on learning at all times. So what does purposeful deployment with Jamf really look like? Well, at Jamf, we support you with the management of those devices. Like we said, continuation of learning is important, keeping devices up to date and making sure teachers can trust that the device has the tools on it that they need, that they've planned for, to allow students to access things. We also want to make sure that those devices are secure. If we're asking students to utilize the devices more often in an independent way, we want to make sure that they're safe whilst they're online, as well as the network being safe from those ongoing cyber attacks that we're all aware of in education. By having things on the device that make sure students are protected at all times, as well as the network being protected at all times, people feel more secure about utilizing those devices. And we want to engage those educators, parents, students, curriculum leads, to make sure that they feel confident using those devices. It's really important that the device does not become a distraction in the classroom, but always has that focus on learning as its intended purpose. And finally, we empower all of the people across the way of that deployment, be that the curriculum leads, the leadership of the school, district leadership, IT admins, or the parent that has the device that comes home at the end of the day. We want to make sure that everybody sees that this is a powerful tool to support that learner to achieve their best. And we do this through providing those super tools that make sure that this is simple and easy to use. With Jamf School to provide that device management, classroom management, and zero-touch support. Jamf Safe Internet to provide that student online safety, the device safety, and network safety. We engage people through the use of Jamf Teacher, Jamf Student, and Jamf Parent, making sure that there is that equitable use of technology and enhanced accessibility at all times. And finally, when you bundle it all together, we empower everybody with this. That IT admin who might not be fully trained in how to do things. We see this quite often, certainly in K-12, where it's just the person who's got the youngest face or pulled an iPhone out at one point, ends up taking responsibility for lots of these IT tools. We can empower those with that simplicity and education-focused tool. So let's look at this in a slightly different way, summing what we've looked at today. We choose Apple devices because we know they have that huge impact on learner outcomes in a transformative way. We know they need to be set up with Jamf, Apple School Manager, and the use of your legacy tools such as Google or Office 365 to make sure that everything is going to work behind the scenes. We then empower the educators and parents in and out of the classroom with our tools to make sure that classroom management is in place. So teachers feel confident to use the devices and are using them for an actual purpose to make sure that students are focused on learning all times and not distracted by the technology. And then we extend and engage with our marketplace tools such as Shobi, GoodNotes, Caligo that have a focus on specific uses in the classroom. Again, not focused necessarily on learning about what the technology can do. This is the level where it's supporting integral learning and teaching through assessment and feedback, quality note-taking in various forms, or a focus on simply developing a student's handwriting in a way that's more interactive and engaging for those students to use. And finally, we wrap all of this up in a safe bubble, utilizing things like Jamf Safe Internet, Jamf Protect, and Jamf Connect to make sure that everybody feels confident that if we're putting these tools into the hands of students to be used on a more regular basis, that we're protecting them and the network to make sure that nothing gets impacted as a result of the use. And it's important at this point to talk about the investment in people through things like Apple Teacher, Apple Learning Coach, and Apple Distinguished Educators, as well as Jamf Educator and our own education community, which supports the understanding of how IT and classroom use can come together to form this fantastic outcome for students. That's it for this session. I hope you found this insightful and learned some useful information